advisor for 26 years. And although this presentation is directed to business owners, many of my comments will be relevant to those who are employees or non-business owners who are trying to plan for retirement. Is the screen visible to everyone now?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, it is.
This is a top outline of the topics we're going to talk about today. Developing your vision of retirement. I think that's important because we all have different views about what retirement really means. A way to estimate your income needs, how to build a nest egg, valuing your business for retirement, selecting the best retirement plan for your business. Once you build a nest egg, where should you invest it? And some thoughts on avoiding being blindsided in retirement. Folks think about retirement in different ways, and I talk about retiring to something, not from something. Hobbies are not meant to fill all the days of your life, so I encourage you to find activities that have structure, build relationships, work towards a goal to keep yourself mentally and physically sharp. Some people actually downsize. They go to a smaller home to minimize expenses and avoid the aggravation with a larger home. Some folks relocate for improved weather, proximity to their family, or financial planning benefits. So here's my proposed definition of retirement. I talk to my clients about getting to a point where work is optional. We're not escaping from work. We've gotten to the point where we have enough resources where work is optional. So your vision may be a new career, volunteering, returning to school, learning to play the piano, joining a rock band, chilling out, read War and Peace. I went to engineering school. I never had time for most of these liberal arts things. I'm doing a lot of reading these days. But think about your own vision of retirement. Some folks want to fish and take care of their pets. This is an interesting combination of retirement. Some folks are interested in smaller pets over the course of their retirement. But here's a list, a bucket list of what I sometimes talk to my clients about, things you should do in your lifetime, and they call it a bucket list. And I'll give you a couple examples. Fly over the Grand Canyon in a helicopter, ride in a gondola down the Grand Canal of Venice, plant a tree, stand on the Great Wall of China, make your own beer, see an opera in Milan. Here's one I have to be careful about. Hang up on a lawyer, or kiss someone passionately in public, play the old course at St. Andrews. So I'm giving you a flavor of the kinds of things that some people would say, this is on my bucket list. And I also talk about building a relationship with a trusted financial advisor, commercial included. If you're adventurous, SpaceX is now taking reservations for their next flight into space. That's a Elon Musk Tesla company. You might consider that. You might do some exotic traveling to interesting places. You might be very adventurous in those interesting places. And you might, some of the females at LISB are very athletic climbers and do these kinds of things for their retirement. But the most courageous ones are the ones that ride their bikes on the cliffs like this, and then ultimately do a wheelie. But maybe you're not of that ilk and you really prefer something a little less aggressive. So here's where you may decide to spend some of your retirement days. But in any case, Life is good. So let's talk about the phases of retirement planning. You're doing retirement planning in two steps. The accumulation phase, that's the time when you're contributing and investing to build a nest egg. Then you have the distribution phase. Once I've got the nest egg, now I've got to invest it to keep my income going for all my retirement years and possibly leaving money to family. Now, how much income will I need in retirement? I provide my clients with a worksheet to do a detailed expense analysis and forecast. But absent that, you might start off with the back of an envelope assessment and just pick a percentage of your retirement income to figure your current income to figure out how much you'll need in retirement. Where do you get the income from? Multiple places. Social Security, working, pensions, annuities, inheritance, maybe you own rental property, maybe you continue your business and keep getting business. Not likely from your children, you may win the lottery, but you also need to get distributions from the nest egg that you built. Let's do an example. Let's assume your current income is $100,000 pre-tax. If you're retiring today, not using the worksheet, but just use a percentage of current income, let's just say if you retire today, you'll need 80% or $80,000 per year. If you're retiring in 5 years, there might be inflation, and let's assume it's 2.5% per year. Then if you're retiring in 5 years, you're going to need $90,000 a year. Now, suppose that your non-nest egg sources, like Social Security or pensions or what have you, provide you $30,000 a year. So then the nest egg must provide 90 minus 30 or $60,000 a year. Now the question is, what size must the nest egg be at retirement in order for me to throw off $60,000 a year? And I'm going to show you some academic studies that talk about how you compute the percentage you could take out of your nest egg without running out of money. To minimize the chance of running out of dollars, you should withdraw no more than 4% per year from your nest egg. So at retirement, if we need $60,000, divide that by 4%, you need to build a nest egg of $1.5 million. Because I need $60,000 a year, and because I shouldn't take out any more than 4% per year, I need to build a nest egg of $1.5 million. Now, where does all that 4% come from? This is an analysis, it's called a Monte Carlo analysis of looking at an investment of $400,000 and what 50%, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and what happens to that nest egg over time if you withdraw 4%, 5%, 6%, or 7%. And as you can see, the higher the withdrawal rate, the sooner you're depleting the money. And I'm going to come back and talk about this later. And these numbers will probably change in the future, and we have ways of mitigating it. But the academics say stay with a 4% withdrawal rate, and you should not run out of money. But we'll talk about how realistic that is. Okay, what's in your nest egg? Employer plans, you may have a 401k, a simple, etc. You may have IRAs, other investments, savings accounts, brokerage accounts, annuities, cash value life insurance. You may have lump sum components. You may have won the lottery. You may get inheritances or life insurance benefits from folks who passed away, or proceeds from the sale of your business. So these are all the items that could make up your nest egg. One very important consideration is the value of your business. Now, for those of you who have shareholders or are not the sole owner, you should have a buy-sell agreement. A buy-sell agreement, and we talked about this in our succession planning sessions. A buy-sell agreement permits you to protect the business if one or more of the partners pass away. Then the family of the deceased can sell the business to the remaining partners. So buy-sell agreement is very important. To do that, you need to value your business. You also need to value your business for estate purposes, for distributions, for tax redemptions, for divorce settlements, and for mergers. So there are a number of reasons why you should do a periodic valuation of your business. How do you value your business? There are three technical accounting methods to value your business based on the income that you generate, the capital cost of past earnings, and discounting future earnings, the market value, comparison to similar companies, or assets based on assets. The truth of the matter is your business is worth only what someone is willing to pay for it, and that changes over time. There's certain factors that may affect the market value of your business. You may have an unexpected hardship, an economic downturn. Look at what's happening now with the coronavirus. How much are you willing to pay to buy a restaurant these days, or a cruise line, or a hotel? The product or the service may become obsolete. You may have strong competitors coming on, etc. And I just want to show you a brief video of this issue about strong competitors. Please tell me that you can see and hear this video when it comes on.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
What's the matter, honey? Can't sleep?
No, I'm fine. Sorry to wake you.
Oh, Charlie, talk to me.
Well, it's probably nothing, but
But what?
well, you know how I've been talking about retiring and selling the business in a couple of years.
You said you talked to some other companies, but the prospects look good.
Until this overseas conglomerate goes the act.
What conglomerate?
They're huge. Got a ton of money there. Sitting into marketing and R&D.
I don't understand. What's that got to do with our retirement?
Honey, they're undercutting our pricing. They're buying up raw materials right and left. They're making it almost impossible to compete.
Which means that it's harder to sell the business.
These companies I've been talking to, some of them are backing off already. You think they're anxious to go head to head with this big outfit? They wouldn't do any better than me, and they know it.
All right, let's just think about this. What if you sell to the conglomerate? Have you thought about that?
Sure, they know I can't compete against them. I mean, I'd be lucky to get half of what the company's worth.
Oh, Charlie.
No, it's my own fault. My own fault. I should have listened to Ray. Planned ahead and made investments. Yeah, I can hear him now. Charlie, that's what you paid me for.
Oh, please. How could you know something like this might happen?
Right. I mean, nobody saw this thing coming. And my business is.
It's your life. You put everything into it.
It's the one thing I know. I thought if anything was going to pay off for me, for us.
Come on. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, the message is pretty clear. Now, it's a little a hokey dramatization, but I think it's not too far from reality under certain circumstances. That you do put all your effort and blood, sweat, and tears into your business, expecting to have a great payoff at some point, and it just may not happen for any of these reasons. So what's the next, what do you do about it? Well, one thing to do is to have a retirement plan. And you could have a retirement plan individually. You could have it at the company. If you have employees, you may want to have a plan that supports yourself and the employee. So what are some of the benefits of having a company-sponsored retirement plan? Firstly, all the contributions that you make reduce your current taxes, whether you're an employee or an employer. If the employer makes contributions and has expenses, those are tax deductible to the employer. Most importantly, the investment earnings grow tax deferred, meaning you don't have to pay tax on the gains. You could use payroll deduction, very convenient way to put money away. There are a large, broad range of investments available. You name beneficiaries to inherit your accounts if you pass. And many plan options are available for the best employer fit. And I'll talk about some of those. But all qualified plans and IRAs, when you take the money out, the withdrawals are taxable. And if you take the money out before age 59 and a half, there are penalties, 10% penalties. And further, you must take the money out of the retirement plan beginning at age 72. So let's review. All the withdrawals are taxable. There are penalties if you take the money out before 59 and a half. And you must start taking money out at age 72. What's in it for you? This, sorry.
About the same.
The potential for accelerated growth of savings due to tax-deferred compounding. This is an example of putting money away, $100 of salary per month for 20 years, earning 8% a year. This is how much you would be accumulating in a retirement plan. If you did it outside of a retirement plan and you were in a 15% bracket, you'd have this much accumulated. And the higher your tax bracket, the better the retirement plan shows. So folks who are earning a good salary and are in a high tax bracket for whatever reason, mostly benefit from putting money away in a retirement plan. Now, how do you select a retirement plan for your business? There are a number of factors. What kind of business do you have? Profit, non-profit, sole proprietor? Also, the number of employees. You may have different age groups, different salary positions, full-time, part-time. You may have union or non-resident alien who are candidates. You can actually include folks who are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. You do not have to include them in your retirement plan. You may have your family in the business, in a closely held business, and here there are certain benefits under those circumstances. You also want to consider how much is the owner have cash available to make contributions to their own account, And will the owner be able to commit mandatory contributions to the plan in good years and lean years? Some plans have higher fees and expenses for tax filing purposes and plan testing. The 401k has these requirements. You need to plan for features such as loans. Some plans permit you to take loans and pre-retirement withdrawals. And also, does your company have a trusted person to oversee the plan administration and reporting? So these are some of the factors for you to consider when you're thinking about putting in a retirement plan. Which retirement plan is best for my business? I'm going to talk about a few of these today. I just want to emphasize that there is a long menu of plans that you could use, especially non-traditional plans, which we're not going to get to today, but I just want you to be aware of them. If you have a number of employees and you're not as paternalistic as others, and you may not want to give all that much money to employees, you want to keep it all for yourself, or most of it for yourself, you could set up age-weighted, new comparability, etc., by partitioning employees into different categories. What I will cover today is simple SEPs, payroll deduction, and 401k. So let's start with a payroll deduction IRA. This is nothing more than an IRA account that you happen to use your payroll deduction for convenience. There's no employer contribution required. The employer arranges deduction from the pay. The employees own and manage their accounts. In 2020, the maximum contribution is $6,000. However, if you're over age 50, there's a catch-up contribution, so you could put in $7,000 per year. There's no loan provision, and portable. When the employee leaves the company, they take their IRA with you. So again, the simplest company plan is a payroll deduction IRA, but it only permits you to put away $7,000 a year for any and all employees, including the owner. A SEP, or a simplified employee pension plan. There are no employee contributions required. The employer decides each year on the amount that's contributed up to 25% of compensation. Now, that's interesting here, the employer has no obligation to put money in. He or she decides at the end of the year whether they're going to make a contribution, and that contribution can be up to 25% of the compensation. All employees receive the same percentage of their salary. If the employer decides to put 10% in of his salary, then he's got to give 10% of everybody else their salary. The employees are 100% vested, in other words, that money is theirs immediately. All the contributions are tax deductible and can be made as late as tax filing time. So if you had a SEP for 2020, you don't have to make these contributions until you file your 2020 tax return in April of 2021. And there's no required IRS form filings, like some plans have requirements to file paperwork. The IRS, that's not required here. I want to return back to this point. If you're self-employed and a sole proprietor, what you try to do, you take your income and your expenses, and that gives you your net compensation. So it's 25% of your net compensation. So if you have income 100,000 and you have expenses of 60,000, so your net is 40,000, so you could do 25% of the 40,000. Okay, that's a step. A simple IRA, and I put in a number of these, is for those employers with less than 100 employees. The employers are required to contribute. Here's the way they're required to contribute. they match dollar for dollar up to 3% of the employee's compensation. In other words, if the employee contributes up to 3%, the employer is required to put up to 3%. So one way to look at this is if you put in a simple IRA, you're essentially increasing, you could be increasing the payroll up to 3% per year. Not necessarily though, because if people don't contribute, you're not required to match them. Now, another feature of the simple plan is instead of doing the match, you could give everybody 2%, even if they don't contribute. So you have to make a choice. Should I give everybody 3% if they match, or if they contribute, or give everybody 2% even if they don't match? One other important consideration is simple. Even though you have to put in 3%, you're permitted to drop this down to 1% in 2 out of 5 years if you have hardship. And so this is a way to back off. But as I said, the worst case scenario, since there are no expenses in the plan, think about a simple worst case. You have to increase your payroll by 3%. The employees can contribute up to 13.5 plus 3,000 for a catch-up, so 16.5. The employees are 100% vested, no loans permitted, no IRS filings, no discrimination testing. You'll see in this progression, now I'm going to talk about a safe harbor 401k. As we go through these, the more complex the plans are, the more you're allowed to contribute. A 401k plan, no limit on the number of employees, maximum contribution by the business owner by avoiding discrimination testing. Now, let me just distinguish. A conventional 401k is not a safe harbor. And in those circumstances, the business owner may not be able to contribute the maximum amount because there's discrimination testing. If there are lower paid employees who don't put enough money in the plan compared to the business owner who's putting the max, that would reduce the available contribution by the business owner because of discrimination testing. The way to get around this is to do a safe harbor 401k, and that turns out to be, it's requiring a match, 3 to 4% of, just like in the simple, if the employer is willing to put in 3 or 4%, there's no discrimination testing. The employer can put in the maximum amount, and in a 401k, it's 19.5 plus 5.5 catch up of 26,000 a year. So this is the principal advantage. If you have a simple, you might want to graduate to a 401k because you could put in a lot more money. There are loans available in 401ks, and now some plans have Roth options. Recall I talked to you before about when you have a traditional IRA or conventional 401k, when you take, you're getting the money in and it's tax deductible currently, but when you take it out, you have to pay taxes. A Roth option is the inverse. You don't get the tax deduction now, but when you take the money out at retirement, you don't pay any tax. And I'm putting, some of the 401k plans I'm putting in now have both the traditional and Roth, and people sometimes say, where should I put the money? Which, in the traditional or the Roth portion? If you're very young and not making very much money, you're probably best putting it in the Roth. If you're making quite a bit of money, you need the tax deduction now to take it into the traditional. Also, 401k requires IRS filings and administrative costs, and you typically have a TPA, or a third-party administrator, who is doing these filings and administrative costs, including testing, etc. So when you get to the point of investigating a 401k, we can get to describe different players, the investment company, the TPA, etc. Also, if you are a sole proprietor with no employees other than your spouse or a family member, there's something called a solo or a single 401k. Still have the maximum contributions, 19 and a half up to 26,000. You can add profit sharing. You could make your contributions limited to 57,000. No discrimination at top heavy testing. You could do it with loans, minimum administrative costs compared to a full 401k. So for those sole proprietors who have no employees other than their family members, and they want to put the maximum away for a retirement plan, you might want to consider a single or a solo 401k. So here's a summary. The least complex, but the lowest available contributions is the payroll deduction IRA, 7,000. Then you graduate to a simple 13 and a half to 3 or 16,500. A SEP depends on how much you earn, 25%. And for regular 401k or single K, 26,000. So this is a quick summary of I know I went through this pretty quickly, and now if you're interested, I could send you more information. But this gives you a kind of an overview of what these plans are, what plans are available and what they offer. We also should point out that some of the legislation recently had changed some of the rules. I mentioned before that at age 70 or 72, you have to take a required minimum distribution. Well, this year, because of the virus, all the required distributions are waived. So if you are over age 70 or 72, you did not have to take it. I have 23 clients who are over the age of 70, and each year we have to go through the process of computing their required distribution. This year they didn't have to take money out, they saved the taxes on that. The CARES Act also waived the 10% penalty for early distributions. You might recall that I said if you were younger than age 59 and a half, if you took money out, you pay a 10% penalty in addition to the tax. Well, because of the coronavirus and people being stressed, some people needed to take money out of their retirement plan to support themselves. So the IRS is waiving the 10% penalty, but you still have to pay the tax. You also, if you took out these distributions, you may be able to put them back over 3 years. So that's a benefit. If you're in dire straits, you need to take money out of your retirement plan, the IRS is giving you the opportunity to put it back over 3 years and spread the tax over 3 years. Typically, 401ks let you take a loan up to 50%. This year, the CARES Act raised the loan up to 100% of your account for $100,000. So they're trying to make the retirement plan as sort of a safety net. If you have a retirement plan, to take money out and use it to support yourself during these tough times. Also, if you have an existing loan in a 401k, you can delay payment back of that loan for up to 1 year. One other thing I want to point out, this is the CARES Act. There was also something called the Secure Act a while ago, and that did two things. It took these RMDs, they were required at age 70, and it took those RMD dates and extended it to age 72. So in the future, going forward, you don't need to take out RMDs at age 70, but you must start taking them out at age 72. Also, if you do not have a retirement plan, do not have any kind of retirement plan, and you're considering putting in a plan, there are tax credits available to employers if you're putting in a new plan, a startup plan. And the rules are rather complex, and I can send them to you if you have an interest. But those credits are very attractive. They range from $500 to $5,000 per year. and they go on for 3 years. So if you have no plan now and you're thinking of putting in a plan, think about exploring the tax credits because it may support some of your expenses. Okay, I now built the nest egg. I had a simple or a SEP or a 401k or a payroll deduction IRA, and I built the nest egg. Now, what do I do with it? I need to take this nest egg and invest it. What are some of the considerations? Well, we're experiencing, in some cases, increased life expectancy, better health outcomes. So retirement may last 25, 30, or more years. The consequence of that is we have to worry about inflation. We've seen how much the different government programs have been put forth to help people with the crisis we had 10 years ago, and now the CARES Act. The government is growing their deficit, and the consequence of that is that we're going to eventually have inflation. We had very low inflation up to now, but it is sure to increase because of these deficits. So what does that mean? Your buying power will diminish markedly over this lengthy time period. You need to meet inflation with growth investing. And my assertion is equities or stocks must be in your portfolio with very few exceptions. And this is true whether you're already built your nest egg or you're accumulating your nest egg. Now, what's an exception? Supposing you've got so much money in your nest egg that you're not taking, you don't need to take the money out. Well, then, by all means, if you've got more than enough money and you just have enough money to leave the kids, etc., invest in government bonds. You're not going to make very much money, but you don't need very much money. If you won the lottery or you have a huge nest egg because you sold the business, then you don't need equities. But for most of us, stocks, equities must be in your portfolio. The longevity risk associated with married couples is part of the circumstance here. The likelihood that one spouse will live to age 70 is pretty high. And as you go down the scale, there's still a probability that somebody's going to live to age 95, 22%. And then brings me back to this chart that we talked about a while ago. The 4% withdrawal rate under these scenarios should last, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. If you take out 5 or 6 or 7%, you're going to run out of money sooner. But I want to point out, my assertion is that two things. One, bond rates have been much lower. This was a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Turns out that most advisors, most academics think that the bond rates are going to be low and the money you're going to earn from stocks are going to be lower over the years. So these may not be so optimistic. In fact, some academics are arguing that you really got to get this 4% down to 3%. And also, you may not be able to sustain these curves. These curves may come down a lot sooner because of the investments you're making in stocks and bonds. But I think it's important that when you do develop your retirement plan and where you put your money, you make consideration of these withdrawal rates. Okay, I just want to turn our attention to some rules of how much investing will get you and where it will get you. I don't know if you've heard of the rule of 72. The rule of 72 says you double your money when the return times the number of years is 72. So if you were investing and got 8% per year, and you invested it for 9 years, 8 times 9 is 72, you would double your money. So if you put in $10,000 into an investment that earned 8% per year for 9 years, you'd have double that money. You could, if you were getting 12% per year, and you invested for 6 years, only 6 years, the rule of 72 says 6 times 12, you double your money in 6 years. Now, 12%, 8%. Supposing it was you were earning 6%, so you'd have to go out you'd have to go 12 years. You have to invest 6% for 12 years to get 72. Likewise, tripling your money and quadrupling your money. So this is a quick way to make a quick assessment. If now think about today, if you put your money in a CD, if you're lucky to get 2%, and you wanted to double your money, the rule of 72 says, if I put my money in a CD, it's going to take 36 years for me to double my money in a CD that pays 2%. This is the consequence of low investments, low interest rates, and that's what's happening to folks who are trying to get income out of fixed investments. It's just very, very difficult right now. Okay, let's talk a little bit historically about where rates have been and returns have been in different investments. This chart shows the value of a dollar growth over time for different types of stocks. Small stocks, large stocks, government bonds, treasury bills, and inflation. And we see that small stocks over the years lead the pack and have returned in the neighborhood of 12.5%. Large stocks, 10%. Government bonds, less than 6%. Treasury bills, 1.5%. So there's no question that the monies to be made are in stocks. The consequences are you have to be able to deal with the dips, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other thing to consider is long-term investing. This shows the possibilities of stock returns. Just concentrate on the green bar. If you ask me what's the stock going to do next, what stock's going to do next year? 1 year, these analyses show it could be, you could lose almost 41% or gain as much as 60%. However, if you invested for 5 years, this substantially shrinks to a possible loss of 6% to a gain as much as 30%. If you invest for 10 years, the gap gets even smaller. The point of this is the more if it's a 50-50 portfolio with stocks and bonds, you'll see you're always going to be positive over 10 years. In fact, over 5 years, if you split your portfolio, you're never going to go negative and could earn as much as 22% in a 50-50 portfolio. These are actual returns over up to 2018. So the message here is you want to invest for long periods of time. I also want to give you a little sense of the negativities in the stock market over the years. This represents the drawdowns or the reductions in the stock market over different time periods. The worst time period was in 1929 and the Great Depression. We had in 2000, we had the dot-com bust. In 2015, we had let's see, what was it? No, 2010. Let me see what the 2010 was. We had the financial crisis. Now, with COVID, we had two experiences in 2020. This was the drawdown in May, and this was the drawdown, the worst one in March. So in the grand scheme of things, what we experienced this year in 2020, we had two reductions, and they weren't, in the grand scheme of things, they were about right in the middle of the reductions over time. Now, Yogi Berra had a very famous saying. He said, predicting the future making predictions is very difficult, especially about the future. This chart shows, takes these sell-offs, plots them down here, and shows in the other bars what happens in the 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year periods after these drawdowns. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in 2020, but take a look at this. The worst one in 1929. Look at the gains in the subsequent 1, 5, and 10 years. Look at 2000, the subsequent 1, 5, and 10 year periods. If you average all of these, the average drawdown was 33%, the average drop. And in the subsequent 1 year, things went up 39%. Subsequent 5 years, 3 years, 61%. In 5 years, up 109%. So the message here historically is stocks do recover if you got the patience to wait it out. So I'm suggesting you got to keep things in perspective. Here's an example of a terrible auto accident. This car went off the bridge and landed here on the side of the road. It could have been much worse. It went off the bridge, landed here, but look at where it could have gone. So trying to get your mind around the notion of keeping things in perspective. This chart shows from 1940 to the present what the S&P 500 did over time. Now, remember how bad the financial crisis was in 2008? This was the 2000 dot-com tech bubble crash. This was Black Monday. I remember being in Texas, working with Texas Instruments on proposals, sitting with them, and the market crashed in 1987. And Paul Volcker had a bear market in 1973. But again, keeping things in perspective, look at the magnitude of these dips in the grand scheme of things compared to the overall growth of the market. Again, you've got to be prepared for these dips, and we'll discuss how to do that. But these dips are traumatic, they're consequential, but they still, in the grand scheme of things, make the argument that you should be and need to be in stocks. And stocks and bonds come in different varieties. Global, small cap, mid cap, large cap, etc. And the bonds come in different entities: high yield, aggregate income, and cash, which is the safest. So from the safest maybe to the most aggressive, you have all of these choices to make when you put together a portfolio. Here's an example of some of the portfolios that you could put together. And time horizon: when will I need the money? 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 10 plus years. What my risk tolerance? Am I conservative? Or am I moderate? Am I aggressive? And here's some typical allocations that you might make. And let's take somebody who's got 6 to 10 years before retirement, and they're of moderate risk. So here's how they would allocate their portfolio. And They would have 25% in bonds. They would have 15% in global and international. They would have 15% in small caps, and et cetera. So there are ways to build portfolios depending upon your time horizon and depending upon your risk tolerance. I would also point out that now you'll find in more and more retirement plans something called target date funds. If you're not inclined to build these portfolios and worry about what they are and what their content is, a target date portfolio is something named for your retirement date. And it moves the mix of stocks and bonds over time. As you get older, it becomes less aggressive. It'll have less stocks and more bonds. Folks now entering retirement plans who don't want to make decisions about where they're going to invest, they use target date funds. Okay, bucket strategy. You built your nest egg and you're concerned, you know you've got to be in the stock market. What are you going to do about it? Well, just like I talk to my clients who have nothing to do with retirement at this point, but are just trying to save for a rainy day, you should have a rainy day fund of cash in some fashion. And that's cash, CDs, money markets, savings accounts, safe money. One way to take that into the retirement realm is to use a bucket strategy. Now, what is a bucket strategy? It's taking your nest egg and allocating it into 3 different buckets. This bucket is your short term, maybe cash, it may be CDs, money markets. Second bucket is somewhat more risky, but will earn you more. This might be bonds, corporate bonds, or intermediate bonds. It might have some high quality stocks that pay dividends. This bucket is much more risky, but you're not going to touch it unless you need it. And what happens is when the market is up high, you take money out of this bucket, put it into this bucket. When the market is low, you don't take money out of this bucket, you take it out of your short-term bucket. This short-term bucket could also mean you could also have life insurance, and you could take borrowings from your life insurance policy. So the bucket strategy is one way to mitigate is to reconcile the fact that you need to be in the stock market, but you don't want to be taking money out when the market is down, so you take money out of your bucket number 1. Now you built this nest egg, and supposing it isn't a super duper large nest egg, what happens if your nest egg is too small? Well, you have to save and invest more during your working years. You have to be more aggressive with your investments, take more risk. You may have to postpone retirement and continue working. You may have to reduce your lifestyle and your spending in retirement. And there are things like home equity loans and reverse mortgages. Probably this is the least desirable to move in with your kids or your relatives. But it's not out of the question that your nest egg is not going to be as large as you need it to be. And these are some of the ways to deal with that. Okay, I built my nest egg. I did a bucket strategy. And I know how much I've got, and I'm living off my nest egg. I just want to point out 2 other things about concerns in retirement that some folks get blindsided by. They're looking out here, everything is good. I've got my nest egg, I'm getting money, but they never see, some people call it the elephant in the room. I say the line behind the door. They're not paying attention. And one of those is the possible need for long-term care support. Many retirees think that their health insurance plan or their Medicare is going to pay for nursing home or home care costs. And someone age 65 today has a 70% chance of needing some kind of long-term care in the future. 2/3 of Americans have done little or no planning to deal with this long-term care need. 75% people believe that they should be doing planning. And these are the cost of care, again, not covered by Medicare, not covered by your health insurance. These are the average costs of care throughout the nation. Now, 102,000 in a nursing home for 365 days of care. If you're in the New York area, this number might be double. It might be 200,000 a year. If you were staying home health care aid coming to the home, $23 an hour national hourly medium. This again might be double in our area. So thinking about long-term care coverage is important. But people don't want to pay for coverage they may never need. And this shows a chart of the length of the claim. Less than 14% will be there will need care for more than 5 years. 48% will never need long-term care need. Above the 50% that do need, they'll have different stays or different periods of time when they'll need it. They'll need it, they'll get better, or they'll pass away. But the main message is that three out of 4 will never need the care or claim will last less than 2 years. Now, what are the implications of that? I don't know if any of you have explored long-term care insurance. It is expensive. It has been plagued by rate increases from many companies. Many insurance companies stopped selling long-term care insurance because they miscalculated what it costs to cover it. But they've come out with a lot of new products now where you could put money into a policy, a plan, which is a combination of life insurance and long-term care. So you put money in, it could be a lump sum or it could be premium payments, and you'll get long-term care buckets. And if you never use the long-term care, it goes into life insurance and your beneficiaries are going to get the money you put in. If you need long-term care, it will diminish the life insurance death benefit. So think about long-term care. You may be able to self-insure. You may have enough money and you don't need any of this insurance, but explore the possibility that you may need long-term care coverage and explore these new products that are available. The other blind side is many of the retirees have not taken care of their appropriate paperwork. And let me give you some examples. Retirement plans, beneficiary designations, become savvy on these. If you have a life insurance policy, if you have a retirement plan, if you have an annuity, if you have a pension, typically those have beneficiaries that you have designated. And if you have changes in your situation and you haven't made those changes to those beneficiaries, for example, if you were divorced and your former spouse is still on those plans and you haven't changed it, when you pass away, that person is going to get be your beneficiary. It doesn't matter what your will says. If you have these beneficiary designations on these plans, your will is irrelevant. These things are passed by contract, and they're not going to change unless you change them. The other thing that many retirees don't have, not only retirees, but folks in all walks of life, don't have a power of attorney. If something happens to you, you need someone to make financial decisions if you're incapacitated. You may be a family member, it may be a friend, but you need to have a power of attorney. healthcare proxy, someone to make healthcare decisions for you, not the hospital. So a healthcare proxy is another document that you need to have, which assigns somebody. If you go to the hospital, typically now they ask you for a healthcare proxy. A living will expresses your desires. If you have a terminal illness, you want them to resuscitate you, what would you like? Then your last will and testament. Again, I'm suggesting that beneficiaries that pass by contract, like IRAs and retirement plans and life insurance policies, don't matter in the will. The will has nothing to say about those. So just because you name Jack as your beneficiary in the will, if Joan is your beneficiary in a retirement plan, Jack is not going to get it. Joan is going to get it. You may also need special trusts, which is subject of another discussion, and consider insurance to offset long-term care costs. Okay, let me try to wrap this up in the following way. Punchlines and action items. Work on developing your retirement vision. You want to retire not from something, but to something. If you need to, I can send you one of these worksheets to estimate your income needs. As we did in the example, we said, oh, it's 80% of your pre-retirement. I have all my clients work details of a worksheet trying to figure out what they really need in retirement. And the list is comprehensive. Many of the things they never even thought of, but the worksheet has value. When you're building your nest egg, plan on withdrawals from your nest egg of 4% or less. If you have a business, get it valued periodically. Don't count on your business or your children to fund your retirement. Find out if you have the best retirement plan for your business. If you have no plan, you should investigate whether a retirement plan makes sense for you. Once you build your nest egg, diversify the nest egg investments. Use cash. This is like the bucket strategy. Use cash and guarantees for short term, but include equities at all ages. Remember the golden rules of growth, the rule of 72, etc. Harmonize your will with your contract beneficiaries. Remember what I said, you have contracts like IRAs, life insurance policies, and your will is different, you have to harmonize those. Plan for funding long-term care expenses. Pay attention and keep things in perspective and enjoy every day. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Excellent.
I'll take some of the questions.
Yeah, Fred, are you gonna? Is Fred there?
Yeah, I'm here. I forgot I was on mute. Sorry about that, everybody. Tony, you mentioned you have a spreadsheet. So